carried legends from Beersheba to the mountains of the high country. The thunder herd still rides. Skies and snow gums bow in winter light. 1,000 shadows cross the dawn, their wild hearts burning through the night. Their blood remembers campfire smoke, long dusty trails and stockmen's hands. The freedom of a younger world still running through this ancient land. Listen. The mountains know their language. Listen. The valleys speak their names. They are the thunder rolling beneath the southern sky. From Beersheba's fields of glory to the mountains standing high, no chains can hold them, no walls can tame them. The spirit of the light horse rides. They are the thunder herd, and the mountains know their names. Across the burning Sinai sands, they carry fate in steady hands. Through dust and fire they thundered on toward Beersheba's fateful dawn. Horse and rider forged as one, a rolling wave against the guns. The desert shook beneath their stride as Australia rose in pride. They are the thunder herd, rolling beneath the southern sky. From Beersheba's fields of glory to the mountains standing high, no chains can hold them, no walls can tame them. The spirit of the light horse ride. They are the thunder herd, and the mountains know their name. And standing on the highest ridges, when the world below has gone to sleep, the ancient stallions face the darkness, guarding secrets they still keep. They remember every stockman, every drover, every mountain horseman, every charge, every rider who never came home, every horse who carried him there. Ride on. Ride on. Ride on. They are the thunder. Dark and wide, the spirits of the old light horse still ride beside their stride. No king commands them, no empire owns them, for freedom runs within their blood, as surely as rivers shape the land. They are the thunder. To the high country, the thunder herd still rides.
Good morning. Well, yesterday the IBEC Commission delivered a report on corruption in Victoria, or investigations. It's called the Independent Broad-Based Anti-Corruption Commission. Got that out. Don't you love a bureaucratic name? They found there was no evidence of broad-based corruption. However, and I'll read you this paragraph, IBEC found serious and concerning conduct by senior public officers, including ministers, members of parliament, public servants, relating to the negotiations of the EBA for the Metropolitan Fire Brigade and establishment of the FRV, Fire Rescue Victoria, which increased the risk of corrupt conduct. This included actions contrary to policy, procedure and codes of conduct, deliberate attempts to conceal and mislead and misuse of information. Now, if that's not corruption, it's that damn close to conceal information, to deliberately conceal information, to misuse information and mislead. Boy, oh boy, that is very, very, very close to corruption. Now, this has been 8 years in the making. IBEC does not have the proper powers to do proper investigations. They've been asking for more powers. This is a corrupt criminal government, as I keep saying, and that is very, very, very close to absolute corruption. They've been lacking the powers and lacking the resources to investigate these circumstances properly. We absolutely must resource the anti-corruption process so that they can properly investigate. And if you read the report, it may not have concluded there was corruption, but by crikey, it is that damn close. It's not funny. Anyway, that's very interesting. On another little separate issue, the US had a economic report yesterday, and their economy has grown 1.5%. I'll draw your attention to the fact that since Tony Albanese's been in federal parliament, the Australian economy per capita has gone nowhere. Zero. 4 years, no growth. There is a distinct lack of productivity. There is probably now corruption occurring in the federal level. We absolutely must do better as Australia. We must grow our economy. We must grow the economy for the young people and the future generations of Australia. Otherwise, we're going to be in a really diabolical lot of trouble. We've got to drop net zero. It's got to go. We need more efficiency and more output in our electrical grid, not wasted capital just getting poured down the toilet on net zero. This is just crazy. It's non-commercial economics. Australia's going down the toilet, particularly compared to the US. We absolutely must do better. Thank you very much. It's Ross Johns here from the Wimmera Mallee Environmental and Agricultural Protection Association. Enjoy your day.
And a very good morning. Still feeling a bit off. Been a very big week. It's been a very, very big last 3 months. Don't think we've had a day off yet. Anyway, who needs sleep? And that's Ross Johns, by the way, from the from WMEAP.com. And Ross is along. Will be coming on later today to have a chat about all sorts of things. What he has for breakfast, because what he has for breakfast is plenty of pep in his step. Anyway, a very big show today too, and it's a Friday. Thank goodness for that. Now, some of the news that's making news around the country. The man who was the face of the US COVID response, COVID response, is potentially facing up to a year in jail. Only a year, but there's more. Wait on Dr. Creepy. And he was accused of contempt. Anthony Fauci, who served under both Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden didn't know. He didn't know he was president. But that's another story. More about that later. He refused to answer questions 111 times in a tense congressional hearing last month. So they want to throw him in jail. And the reason why, just for those wondering why he didn't answer those 111 questions, he actually knew the answer. But that 1 year in jail might have extended to 111 years, maybe, for each question he didn't if he answered it, he would have been in deep doo-doos. We know that, and it's interesting too, all those that said we were cuckoos. We're not cuckoos. Except for my overwork at the moment, I'm pretty healthy. You know, I'm 132 years old. Give me a break. Okay, let's get on to more alarmism. A weather expert claims he works at a Florida TV station. So he's now a weather expert. This is to create chaos and fear amongst you. This is what they do. Same with the Brumbies, and it's the same with anything. They want to create chaos, and you look amongst your troops, the ones that you work with, the ones you're fighting a good cause for. There's always a couple that you're going to create trouble. You've got to ask yourself, who do they work for, really? I won't say anymore, but a weather expert claims a monster gathering in the Pacific could become the most extreme climate event humanity has faced in centuries. People will be frying in the street. You know, it's a heap of crock, isn't it? Give me a break. Yeah, for centuries. Okay, let me tell you a little bit. At the moment, we have the sun is. This is, you know, geologists and NASA will probably verify this. That every 400 or 500 years we have a sort of a mini ice age. It's only because of the sun sort of doing what it does. And I don't know what it does, except it makes me nice and warm at times. And so what we have is, it's a sort of a mini ice age. Not really, but that's, you know, go back 400 or 500 years ago, you'll see the same thing. So the El Nino that's going to create havoc, let me tell you, it's pure poppycock. It is not true. Like the ISC, let's make up a story. Let's scare everybody. Anyway, now they were tipped, this is the government, to make housing more affordable, but the government's negative gearing and CGT changes have done anything but, according to one expert. In fact, rental properties are going up, and those who want to buy houses are now buying the cheaper ones. Now, who would have thought? That's the federal government. Truly, they're awful. But the question is, will one nation, except a lot of talk, we'll get rid of them, we'll throw them out, send them back to wherever they came from. I was born here. I don't care. You just got to go somewhere. We don't want you here. That's one nation. Then you got the LNP. Oh yeah, we'd like to be Labor because they keep winning. Maybe we could just we'll call ourselves the LNP, but actually we're really Labor light. And then look at Snowy 2, Malcolm Turnbull, and Angus. I mean, they're all goody. My bank account is getting better. All part and parcel. Smoke and mirrors. Something that wasn't smoke and mirrors, last night I had a glance, except until the last 10 minutes because I had to go to bed and need my beauty coma, as you can see. I'm 192, not 132, I lied about that. North Melbourne, 15-10-100. The Roos, under Alistair Clarkson, defeated the Doggies, Western Bulldogs, 11-11-77. That is just fantabulous. We're going to talk to shortly Caleb Hoffman, but he's having some issues with his internet, dropping in and out and looking very fuzzy. Or is that just from my eyes? I don't know. Anyway, this is the Country Telegraph.
A sunny day for most of the Sunshine State. Just a few isolated showers along the coast north of Mackay. A chilly morning in the south, then a mild to warm and sunny day. Brisbane, 24 degrees and sunny. For New South Wales, plenty of morning frost and fog, particularly on and west of the ranges. Then a dry and partly cloudy day almost statewide. Sydney, 18 degrees at the top and sunny conditions. Canberra, a frosty start with -5 degrees on the forecast there, and then a mostly sunny top of 16. In Victoria, a few showers sweep across the south during the early morning, and then cloud and showers persist mainly about the ranges in northwesterly flow during the day. Melbourne will see a partly cloudy day with a top of 16, with early morning showers possible. Dry for most of Tasmania with showers just along the west coast and ranges. High cloud thickening later in the day. Hobart a top of 15 degrees and cloudy. As we head west to South Australia, the weather starts to get more interesting. Northerly winds increasing with showers and patchy rain extending from the west during the day. A possible storm or two along the far west coast as well. Generally dry conditions across eastern districts. Adelaide, a sunny start and then showers arriving in the evening, a mild top of 19 degrees. In Western Australia, we'll see patchy light rain for parts of the Gascoyne and interior districts. And then looking further south, showers coming in from the west across much of the southwest land division during the day. Winds increasing as this cold front approaches. It reaches the southwest coast in the late evening and brings a risk of thunderstorms along the coast as well as a large swell. Perth, a top of 19 degrees with showers and the slight risk of a storm along the coast in Perth as well. Sunny across the top end with just a few fog patches in the morning. Some areas of smoke haze again with plenty of fires in the landscape up north. For Darwin, a sunny top of 32 degrees.
And welcome back to the Country Telegraph. Instant Polls is our official sponsor. Now, if you want to increase your bottom line, boost your communication with your frontline staff, and gather valuable data from your most important resource, your employees, then visit Instantpolls.online to learn more. Now, this week's poll on the Country Telegraph, soon to be the Pulse, do you believe government and environmental organisations provide accurate information about feral animals? Why do we call horses feral? And they're off for a race at the Feral Cup. Now, just use the QR code on your screen to vote. There it is. Just look to my bottom right, I think it is, or left or right, somewhere. And you might be looking backwards, going backwards. Each vote is secure and anonymous and verified by 2FA, two-factor authentication. You'll have a week to vote before the result is broadcast on the Country Telegraph, soon to be the Pulse, after 8 a.m. next Monday. The link will also be published on our Facebook page this morning. Share the link, share the love, and ask your family and friends to participate. Make your opinion count. Caleb Berhnard Hoffman is a practicing permaculturist who is in process of developing a research farm and demonstration site for all aspects of landscape regeneration. Now, he currently self-funds the farm development through his own work of consulting, designing and implementing primarily in the watershed aspect first, agroforestry second, and integrating grazing as the third focus, with all three coming together as the core pillars of increasing carrying capacity and building past landscape resilience. Caleb, thanks for joining us. He's gone. No, hey, 1 second, you disappeared before. So what's happened is that, so I'm just going to go to a quick 15-seconder, as we do here. We panic professionally, and I'll just reconnect you because you dropped out and you came back again. This. And we're back, just like that. See? How's that for magic, Caleb? Nice to see you. Are you cold? Is it cold in, because I think you're in Jindabyne, aren't you?
No, it's actually pretty warm today.
Yeah, but
All
you're
things
from the
considered,
land of the Great Ice Block.
Yeah. Yeah, I look, it's all relative, of course. It is all relative, of course.
Tell me there's more about your business, if you wouldn't mind, because I'm actually very interested in it.
Yeah, I would love to. So I help landowners, whether that's farmers, whether that's bush blocks, whether that's all the way down into the suburban, urban, peri-urban scale. Take better care of their land, um, primarily looking at how we can lift carrying capacity, how we can regenerate and rehabilitate landscape en masse, and you know, pretty much lead people along. We gotta really first, they've got to care themselves first, and then I come in and I just kind of show them what the best management practices are, and how we can get water back in the landscape, how we can get diversity back in the landscape, how we can bring the function back to what it once was and what it can be again.
Tell me, is our landscape dehydrated? And if it is, what can we do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've come from the lion's share of Australians have come from very wet islands and very wet continents, and drainage was the most critical part for them. But when that mindset arrived on this continent, it did untold amounts of damage. Not just that mindset, but also the need for shipping things upriver and the need for having land you could drive a wheeled vehicle across. And, all these things came together to, in essence, drain Australia at an incredible rate when colonization first happened. So Australia is drained to about the degree it could be, and no further. I think if it could be, it would be. But what that looks like is that looks like where waterways once were chains of ponds or kind of plugged, slow percolating systems. They are now creeks, fast flowing creeks, larger ordered streams, and then all the way to the soil profile, where the soil profile, because of hard hoofed animals, and because of machinery and because of everything else around the way that we live, has collapsed the soil profile. Where we used to have larger amounts of carbon and more aggregated soils that acted as big sponges, that's all collapsed down. We've got next to no carbon left in it. We've got next to no aggregation or no humus, and because of that, we also get massive amounts of runoff, and that is also the other part of the dehydrated landscape.
Often hear about watershed rehydration, restoration. Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's coming in and looking at the landscape, seeing what state it's in, and then taking reasonable measures um, to bring it back to a state in which it would have been. So it's a lot of it's reading the landscape, understanding what's going to best suit that landscape, and then working towards that with whatever means makes sense. And that's a big part of rehabilitation. You can go out and spend $1 million. You can go out and spend $15,000 to $30,000. And if done thoughtfully, you can get the same outcomes.
It's very interesting. Tell me about dams and ponds. How they, actually I know the question, know the answer to this one, but I'd like you to explain it because you'll do it better than I would. How dams and ponds fit into the whole picture.
Yeah, absolutely. So a thoughtfully placed farm dam, when in scale to the landscape, adds quite a bit of benefit. Not only a safe and secure stock watering spot, but also, say, a place to take a nice little splash on the weekend. When done correctly, it's quite funny when farm dams are done correctly in the right climate. They look like a whole bunch of tiny little hoof prints from cows when you're rotationally grazing. You'll notice that where you don't get full compaction, you just get little splotches of water being held in the landscape, and that's kind of what a well-sized, well-placed farm dam will start to look like in the landscape when, say, you fly over it. They do a lot for irrigation as well from the top, so you can put a pipe through as you're building the dam, so you've got stock water downstream of it, and you can fence stock out of it. And that's one of the big things is fencing stock out of it, so you've got a living skin along the edge of it. They're not right in all climates. In our semi-arid climate, dams, especially too big of dams, give you too much evaporation for how low our precipitation is. But when tied in, especially with swaling or water harvesting infrastructure across the landscape, they become a very critical aspect of the landscape rehydration plan for a farm.
Um, what happens when a dehydrated landscape, with a dehydrated landscape, and its effect in driving the climate?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So depending on who you talk to, and this is really if we really want to get to the heart of a certain facet of this issue, we need to talk about we need to talk about control and control around dialogue and control about how we talk about the issue. If we follow what is purported to be the biggest issue in our climate, which is supposedly carbon. We want to talk about that. Um, we're not going to get anywhere with that. Carbon controls approximately 4% of the total climatic systems. So when you're talking about heat moderation, when you're talking about all other facets that come into that equation, carbon controls about 4% of that. Where, depending on who you talk to, water controls anywhere from 60 to 95.6% of that whole system. So much that water is what dictates how much carbon we capture and or release within plants. So water is truly the crux of that issue, and the fact that the conversation isn't around that and solely around carbon is a prime example of intellectual capture. It's about as good of an example as we've got around intellectual capture.
It's not a very easy place, is it, to work in Australia? Because if you disagree with those above you in their mind, they're going to, and you keep persevering with it, they're going to make your life a little more difficult. And I see that with Peter Andrews. Peter Andrews should be on top of the pile at the moment. Why isn't he getting more support for his work? And he's got a gong from the government to say, what a good job you've been doing. But really, he's just hidden in the corner, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah, he really is. He really is, or at least to some degrees, he feels like he is. It's not all hope is lost for him and what he's put forth. I mean, there's many people carrying that torch. His son being one of them, and his son also not being, all weeds are reparative mechanisms of the soil. That's a lot of what the soil science is telling us. And a lot of the people who are first and early to fixing this ecological issue we have are going to be just that. They're going to be tough, they're going to be weedy, and they're going to be thorny because they are the ones coming in here and saying, like the weeds are, no, this is wrong. This is how we fix it. And I'm going to be as pokey as I've got to be until you guys learn that this is what's going on. So it's very common for somebody who's coming in with such a brilliant way of healing landscape, fixing country, to be as pokey as he needs to be to get to get where he needs to be. and that's put people off from him, because we like comfort. We're creatures of comfort, especially within modern society, and anything that challenges that comfort, people are going to be adverse to, or they're going to find that they don't like grabbing that thistle. And that's rightfully so, because we shouldn't be grabbing a thistle. We should be letting them grow, as Peter Andrews has said.
Mm.
Um, with each successional generation that grows up on past that initial weed, as we learn in ecological succession, they get a bit softer, they get a bit greener. There's a little less thorns around because that thistle or that Peter Andrews has set up the conditions and has started to regenerate the whole, that you can be a little bit softer and you can get that message across a bit more sweetly, like his son is doing. His son is, from what I can discern, a brilliant orator, and has taken on what his dad has taught him and is going forth with that knowledge. And it's burgeoning. There's a lot of people, the conversation is ripe. There's a lot of people talking about it, and rightfully so. We're at the point where, this would have been great 50 years ago, but it's great that we got it now.
Yeah, just brilliant. I do think that you are the future of the planet, by the way. And I'm from the land. I was looking at a video before I came on air, because I get here bright and early, far too early for my eyelids at this stage. And being 432 years old, I do need my beauty coma or beauty sleep. But having said that, I did look at the video, and this guy had just sprayed the entire, or not the entire, a quarter of his property with Roundup. You have to get rid of the, get rid of the weeds so he can add moisture and regenerate the soil. Just quickly, because we haven't got 24 hours and we don't need you to be banging your head on a table. But can you just tell me, in your own candid opinion, where he's going wrong with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, where that idea fails is just in a very basic understanding of ecological systems and how they work. When we use glyphosate to kill off quote unquote undesirables, unwanted, what we're doing is we're actually stopping that process of rehabilitation of the soil in such a way that we're quite actively dehydrating that soil profile. So all of those weeds that we, for some reason, or for lack of understanding, don't want in our soils, are actually releasing soil exudates. And those exudates look like kind of a gelish, sugary, kind of a gelish, sugary matrix that it releases in exchange with that soil food web. And that is actually what's leading to the ability of the soil to rehydrate. You're creating these really interesting molecules that are a bit of carbon and really long chained, and are actually able to build humates and humus, which that aggregation is and that gel that it then builds into the soil is actually what has the capability of holding moisture when it does come around.
Yeah.
So coming in, spraying it all out, and then thinking you're going to be able to rehydrate it's not the whole picture, and for that it's very degenerative.
And also he's encouraging illness down the track, because glyphosate's in Roundup, and there aren't many countries in the world that still use it, but we do, and we use paraquat too. And it was interesting. A guy did a study on some wine. It's two bottles of wine, cheap one and a more expensive one, which I would have been into the cheap one. That's all I can afford. But it was very interesting because both wines had traces of paraquat, which is really interesting. And so we've got to be careful what we put on our food, because what you're growing, because the chances are we're going to ingest it down the track. And if you ingest enough of it, and I don't know how much, but if you ingest enough of it, you're in deep doo-doos, aren't you?
Yeah, in high enough quantities, it's a neurotoxin. in the quantities that we get microdosed it every single day, it's denuding to an extreme level our own microbiome.
Absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Caleb, somebody wants to find out more about you. How do they do that? And by the way, for those enjoying this segment, this conversation, Caleb has agreed to come on at a regular occurrence, and which I'm very excited about because, again, I think Caleb is the future of the planet. Simple as that. Caleb, how do they find out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a website which is contouredland.com.au, based down in Jindabyne Way. So if anybody's ever down this way and wants to call out and take a look at the demonstration site we're developing here, or just have a yarn and a coffee, that's always happy for that as well. But my website will have all my details, and if anybody has any questions, I'm always just a phone call away or an email away, and always happy to chat.
Absolutely fantastic. Caleb, thank you so much. This is the Country Telegraph. Yesterday was a big day. The Brumbies petition to halt aerial culling at the Kosciuszko National Park was tabled in Parliament. We've got a grab here from Tanya Thompson MP. I mean, there's a video that's out now that goes for about 31 minutes. A bit too long, although we should play it, I think, in its entirety if we could, because it has so much information, and you can see which way it's swaying to. It, however, doesn't stop the killings, and they're still doing it now, and the aerial killings will continue in November. So it doesn't stop, and it's all very nice, warm fuzzies, but it doesn't stop. It keeps going. So there's all this, everyone's quite buoyed, and they should be quite happy with what's happened, but it doesn't stop the killings. So the kumbaya moment is simply that. It's a kumbaya moment. An important moment too, because down the track, who knows how long, maybe they will stop it. And they probably will stop it because there's nothing left. Absolutely nothing left. And yesterday we heard from Claire saying that a couple of years ago, the Valley of the Ghost, there was just carcasses upon carcasses upon carcasses. They did most of the damage then. So what we have is just the leftovers. You know what happens to leftovers? They're scooped into the bin, and that's what's going to happen to the Brumbies. So I'll play this, very important still, but they're still going to kill. So we've got to stop the killing. It's as simple as that. And those banging their tin cans and whatever, just do something. I mean, we have to stop it. We can't have this happening, and we all need to become a collective force against, which I call evil. You do not kill these bloody horses. I mean, it's just barbaric. Who are we? Who do we think we are? Anyway, let me play this, otherwise I'll keep talking and I'll never play it.
Thank you, Speaker. And I rise in support of this petition signed by more than 20,000 citizens of New South Wales. 20,000 people cannot simply be dismissed as a fringe group or a handful of sentimentalists unwilling to face difficult choices. They have used the democratic process available to them because they care deeply about Kosciuszko National Park, the welfare of the Brumbies, and the way this program is being carried out. I acknowledge my colleague, the Honourable Nicole Overall in the other place, who has pursued this issue with great persistence. I also note that this petition was presented by the Labor member for the entrance, and I think that alone should tell the government how widely these concerns are shared. Aerial shooting of horses in New South Wales national parks was stopped following the Guy Fawkes River operation in the year 2000, when 606 horses were shot from helicopters and serious animal welfare concerns provoked widespread public outrage. For 23 years, the practice did not return. It was reinstated in 2023, not through legislation debated and voted upon by this House, but through a ministerial amendment to the Wild Horse Management Plan. The government may say the target of 3,000 horses came from a plan adopted under the former coalition government, and it did, and I do not run from that. But effective management requires more than setting a population target. It requires confidence in the starting figure, reliable measurement of progress, and management methods that are proportionate, humane, and open to scrutiny. The 2021 plan established the target. It did not authorise aerial shooting. That method was added by this government in 2023, and this government must remain accountable for how it is being carried out. The SMH has reported Brumby population numbers in 2023 estimated to be between 12,797 to 21,760 horses. In 2024, it fell dramatically to between 2,131 and 5,639. In 2025, it rose again to between 6,476 and 16,411. During this period, more than 6,000 horses were killed through aerial shooting. Wildlife surveys necessarily involve uncertainty, but when estimates change this dramatically from one year to the next, and when the current range spans almost 10,000 animals, the community is entitled to ask whether the evidence is sufficiently precise to justify an irreversible program on this scale. The government must explain these changes clearly and have its estimates independently verified. There are also legitimate animal welfare concerns. The independent assessment of the initial 2023 operation recorded an average of 7.5 shots fired at each horse. National Parks and Wildlife Service representatives explained that repeat shooting was deliberate and intended to ensure rapid death. But when a program involves firing that many rounds into an animal from a moving helicopter, the public is entitled to more than assurances that procedures were followed. It is entitled to rigorous, continuing and genuinely independent oversight. Yesterday, Minister Sharp announced figures in the other place detailing the numbers of horses killed, along with the numbers of other feral animals controlled and horses trapped and rehomed, and I acknowledge that information. But announcing overall totals does not, by itself, answer the questions raised by this petition. It does not explain the dramatic movement between annual population estimates, demonstrate animal welfare outcomes across every operation, or show whether non-lethal alternatives have been supported to operate at their greatest possible capacity. The Minister amended the plan once to permit aerial shooting. She can amend it again. I ask the government to suspend further aerial operations until the population estimate has been independently verified. Publish detailed operation by operation welfare data supported by genuinely independent oversight. Release a properly funded trapping and rehoming strategy, including its targets, capacity, costs and outcomes, and not simply the number of horses processed to date. And provide a clear timetable and budget for the fertility control trial the government has announced. Protecting Kosciuszko and respecting the communities that live alongside it are not competing objectives. They have been placed in conflict because this government has chosen speed over scrutiny and assumed a level of public confidence it has not earned. More than 20,000 people are asking the government to pause, produce the evidence and consider a better way. That is not an unreasonable request. I commend the petition to the House.
Thank you.
My name is Ashley Avis. I'm a filmmaker and the founder of the Wild Beauty Foundation. We've just returned home to Los Angeles from Australia after several weeks abroad, documenting the events surrounding the culling of the Brumbies, the shooting of wild horses by air and on the ground. We have chosen to release the following footage so that it can be helpful for education, for awareness, and for any existing litigation that is occurring in the courts. Please be aware that what you are about to see is very difficult to even comprehend. As of now, as of today, we have 90 days to stop the next cull in November. Please raise your voice, and thank you for being Brumby Strong.
Oh my God. We've just hiked into the Kosciuszko National Park and we have found this. This is the iconic Palomino stallion that you see in photographs that has driven tourists to come to this incredible natural tapestry, and instead you find violence. Another member of his family, a filly down the mountain, had been violently shot, and we come up here to find this, and this is not humane management. Penny Sharp, Chris Minns, Jack Goff at the Invasive Species Council, how you can condone this and how you can defend this as a method of management.
They did an aerial cull here, shot all the horses here.
Oh my God. Is that a heart?
We've hiked out about 2 hours this morning with Kiki Schober, and this is what we found. An entire family shot down. That is the stallion. And I hope anybody watching this has the courage to stay with me. And
think it's very, very important to see this and to bear witness, because silence and inaction is complicity. There's nothing humane about this. This is a mare that aborted her foal as she was being shot down. That is a baby. This was a family. There's nothing humane about this.
Don't say good morning after that. This is terrible. I can't say it. Terrible. Absolutely shocker. We need to stop the killing. The hugging and back slapping and stuff, very important, but it continues. The killing of these brumbies continue. Sue Armstrong creates music, or Susan Armstrong, sorry, creates music and visual art under the name of Seahorse Seeker, which we play her music extensively. I think it's, I think one of the songs has been used as an anthem now. Her music blends narrative, emotion, and imagery to explore themes of healing, resilience, nature, and the human experience, with a lifelong love of words and a great wordsmith. Sue has been writing poems, stories, and songs since childhood. Sue writes all of her own lyrics and develops the story and emotional arc of each song herself. Now, she uses AI-assisted music tools, which is fine, to especially get over a message so well, and explores different musical styles, arrangements, instruments, and vocal options until she finds the sound that best captures the feeling she wants to convey. First of all, Sue, thanks for joining us. We actually just need your microphone on.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
That's right. But it was great. We could go lip reading. First of all, I've got to congratulate you on your newest song. It's just fantastic. Tell me what you were reflecting on, the lyrics, because they're what others are saying. The facts don't speak for themselves at the moment. They're not facts. They're just propaganda from the ISC and the government and all the others that support the killings. Tell us about this song and what it actually means.
Yeah, hi Mike. Thanks for that. The song, as you know, I got involved in the Brumby discussion back in early June when my friend raised this to me and when I wrote my very first Brumby song. And on the back of that, there was a lot of reach out from people, not just in Australia, all over the world. And it's been incredible to have had such different conversations with so many different people. And on the back of the conversations and the getting so involved in this, it's because I've had thousands and thousands of messages. It's been incredible. I think the song's had over 1 million plays now. It's it's phenomenal. The definite sense on the ground was that there was a lack of transparency, and so I kind of dove a bit deeper and became very curious. And as part of that, one of the things that really stood out to me was that there was definitely a lack of transparency. And as I dove deeper and deeper, I was kind of looking at various different reports that were cited, and one of the things that I noticed was that a report would point to another data point that was in another report that would, and when you follow the actual you get back to the actual data point, which was tracing that back was a bit of a task. The data points were not affirmative, so they would say things like may cause or are likely to cause. And so I think it just became very apparent as I kind of looked at the various different aspects of this. Looked at the numbers, looked at the various different evidence. There's a lot of people that cite the corroboree frog, But if you actually look at the primary cause of the corroboree frog being impacted, it's actually the fungus, and it's also climate change. So, so horses absolutely may cause damage to the frog, for sure. However, the primary cause is definitely the fungus and the climate change. So, I very much got the sense that the right questions, in my perspective, and many other people have the same perspective and share that view, that the right questions are not necessarily being asked. And in my initial song, I took the perspective of a Brumby, the stories about the stallion on the mountain. I think many people will have listened to the song. And it's what I wanted to then do now was to kind of take a different perspective and to write a song that was still from the perspective of Brumby, but it was very much focused on asking the questions. So basically, I'm asking the decision makers, or the Brumby's asking the decision makers, to really think about the questions that they are asking. Because one of the things I read recently, and I've done a lot of research into this space, but it's interesting that there was a article that said good public policy should withstand robust questioning. And so it's about ensuring that government decisions are based on comprehensive evidence, independent scrutiny, and transparent governance. And one of the things that I think is interesting as well is that a lot of the evidence and a lot of the independent scrutiny, if you then peel that back like the layers of an onion, what I'm finding and what I'm seeing is that these independent bodies are not necessarily truly independent. So I guess my song really is about encouraging those questions to be asked and encouraging those decision makers to take the time to do that. And it was really lovely just to kind of recap on the discussion that was held yesterday in Parliament, which I dialed into and watched that from home. I did want to be there, but sadly I've got a boot on my foot, so I wasn't able to be there in person. But it was really great to hear Tanya Thompson speak about the fact that we need to pause for evidence, and it's incredible that there's 22,000 people in Australia that signed the petition. And more broadly, there's people all over the world that are absolutely up in arms about this. But it's really interesting to look at the types of questions that that should be asked. And if the government is making the right decision, then back to the case before, that public policy should not withstand robust questioning. So I think it's very fair to ask questions around the stewardship, ask questions around, how do they measure the outcomes, ask questions around, the transparency, how are they determining the priorities? I've got so many questions here, right? But that was kind of the rationale behind the song. And interestingly, you look at other situations, what baffles me is that most anybody making a decision ordinarily would have to have a decision based on strong evidence. And it's interesting that there are a number of other cases, because I was curious to see what else, what other situations out there have had the same type of scrutiny, and did the government stop and pause? And yes, they have done. The government has stopped and paused on other issues like this. One of them, as an example, was the Robodebt Royal Commission back in 2023. And if you look at the one of the reasons that they did that, I'm just looking back at my notes here, but basically what they identified was the interpretation and the methodology. There was issues in those things, and that comes back to my point earlier on about the scientific distinction. When someone says it can cause damage, and then when they then take that to be the primary cause of decline. So it's kind of like the misrepresentation of data. A lot of the cases that I reviewed, they basically, what they called out was that the assumptions were not sufficiently tested. There was conflicting evidence that wasn't always adequately explored. The independent scrutiny came too late. The transparency was limited. the alternative interpretations were not fully considered, and the decisions were made and implemented before the uncertainties were resolved. And there's so many parallels, right? That's what I found. So yeah, that's where the song came from. That's kind of why I've become very passionate about the governance side of things, and that really for me is the reason that I wrote the song and sharing the song.
It was interesting. Yesterday we spoke to Claire Rogerson, who knows the Brumbies probably as well, if not better than most. And she was saying yesterday that there are none left anyway, just the peripherals. If that's the case, Australia is just dismantling its record. It did that with COVID, with lockdowns. Now it's doing this with the Brumbies. What is it with Australians wanting to kill?
I don't understand it either, but I think there's a lot of drive here. If you think about it, there's a lot of influence from the Invasive Species Council, and I understand and appreciate that they have a job to do, but their job predominantly is to kill. And I do think there's a lot of focus on that. And I do believe as well there's a bit of a hyper focus on the Brumbies. And it was interesting, I read in I can't remember which report, the 2006 report that was around the whole of the environmental flora and fauna. The only reference, that was the Kosciuszko National Park Management Plan, that's it. The only reference to any action was Brumbies. It was interesting that there was no other actual cited that I found reference to any other action. So I think there's definitely a hyper focus on the Brumbies, and there's definitely a hyper focus on killing. And there are some beliefs that there may be a follow the money issue there. And I think these are the things, these are the questions that really need to be asked in terms of understanding any of the financial gain, and are there any other things that are influencing the decision in any way. So I do believe that there's a lot of questions that really should be asked around the governance side of things.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm going to step over the line here a little bit. We, in our past life, and I still do personally, we're about to bring back some of our past life back to life very shortly with the Pulse. But the killing of innocent people in Gaza, whether you're an Israeli fan or a Palestinian fan, to me it had no bearing at all. It was the killing of innocent people, and the terror that they would have felt seeing their parents or these young children being carried away, half of the child, because I saw the photo of a child being carried away by the father that had panned out, that he'd lost his entire torso. So it was just the horror that you would go through. And I moved that across to the horses, because the horses, one, it's all lies, very similar to what's happening overseas. It's all lies. And these animals, these are living beings. They've got families, they think, they know the history that they partake. And if you go right back then to the First World War, which shows you we have this propensity to kill. After we always play at the start the Battle of Beersheba, a song we always have because I think it's very important that we don't forget our history. But our history also doesn't talk a lot about 130,000 horses were basically killed. And a great number of those, if not all of them, or most of them, sorry, they were, after the war was won, they couldn't bring them back. Oh no, can't bring them back. So they shot them all. They put them into pens and shot them all.
That's horrendous.
And we continue to do the same thing. Shoot them, kill them. And I don't care. There's a lot of politics I'm finding in this part of the woods too. We had that with the other part. But I don't care. I don't care about the politics. I don't care about the shit that's going on. This has got to stop, because this just shows you that we have not progressed since the caveman days. And in caveman times, they used to eat things because they needed to eat. But otherwise, they didn't kill them. But we do. We just kill them. And, people go out shooting. Look at the shooters. Got to go and shoot a horse. Got to go and shoot a deer. Got to shoot a cat. Whatever. It's got to stop. And I think your music, it's absolutely stunningly important to me. And I think to most people, because with the your first track, which we play every day. At the end of the show, we always play it because it is so important to the emotions and acknowledging that you don't kill living things just because you want to make money from that particular, that, for example, in the Kosciuszko National Park, you want to make money from. You don't do that. These horses that were shot in the First World War, that is just absolutely pathetic. We should be so ashamed of our dark history there. I mean, you don't do those things. So your music, Sue, I think not only for me but for millions of people, I have to say it is so important, and for that I thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm glad that it's getting the reach, and it's really lovely to receive the feedback from people when they do connect with me, and I do appreciate all those comments. And I really do hope that, the latest song about are we asking the right questions? I really do hope that maybe prompts people to have a think about, even, for us who are, who believe that flora and fauna and, acting in a humane way, can be achieved together. I think, I really hope that people do sit back and ask the question, and that, we do get to the point where, we get to a commission or we get to the next discussion in Parliament. And I do hope that it's a fair discussion. I think that's my other concern, is that, yesterday, it was interesting how the the pro-cull MPs referenced repeatedly how they're being attacked, and how they're having these threats, and there was a lot of things that were involved in the discussion that felt to me that a little one-sided, because actually people who are want to stop the cull, the people who believe that we should stop and pause, we're too getting these similar things. I've had my Facebook account attempted to be hacked multiple times. I've had lots of not so nice messages too, and I think that I do think that I would like to see a very balanced discussion, where I think evidence that is presented fairly, and I do hope that the right decisions are asked, and that people don't just use the information that's out there at the moment, because, as I say, I've seen reports that cite reports, and when the source data is, when you look at the source data, that's where there's a misrepresentation of the data point that's being presented, and a lot of the reports as well are very dated, very that we're talking like 10, 15 years old here and more. And so I do think there's a need to look at currency. I was looking at what's the standard for a report and data that should be used, and it's usually 5 years and no more than 5 years. And if you look at some of these data points and some of the documentation, it is very dated, and a lot of the points often say inconclusive. And I think that in itself, again, begs the question, we need to do more and understand more. You look at the numbers, I find the whole the number situation and the count very fascinating as to how they've reached the number that they have. And I really just believe that the governance is something that really, and these questions really need to be asked, and I think we need to really consider the questions that we are asking as well, and make sure that they are truly ensure that there is accountability and the integrity of the evidence, and making sure that independent assessors are truly independent. I think that that's quite important.
Yeah, I think first of all, stop the killing. Just stop, and then. But there should be no killing. That we don't need to kill. In this day and age, we do not need to kill. Science is very good at of helping us if we used it for the right purpose, but we do not need to kill. And as for the overpopulation and destroying the environment, that is pure fabrication. It's just a lie, and it's again the propaganda. But I could talk forever. I would even let you get a word in. So I do that. I'm going to. We'll go into your newest song now, And we'd like to invite you on. We're going to do lots of new programming shortly. We're going to do a lot more on the horses, not just Australia, but also globally, because of what they're doing to Mustangs and the threat to the, for example, the Dartmoor Hill ponies in the UK. And we're going to also talk to the musicians and people who've been writing these songs, and just to do not a deep dive, but a nice conversation about what drives you and other artists, and what drives these bad people to do what they do. So we're going to dedicate a lot more to what we're doing and expand our programming. So we'd love you to be part of it in some way. I think you're just an amazing person, and it's your fault. It is your fault that I've gone through 48 boxes of tissues. So good on you. And we now have to budget. Mike will only have 10 boxes of tissues a week. I can't help it. I just cannot help it.
I've gone through a lot of tissues too. As I said to you last time, when I put the Michelle and Ian's photographs to the lyrics and created the video for the song, the first song, I was in tears and still watch that and still get moved, and I think that the photographs really brought the song to life. So I really appreciate the support of Michelle and Ian. But yeah, I've cried a lot too.
It does it to you. Music does that to you, and that's where they say kick the emotion out. No, the emotion is a very important part, especially when you're talking about our history and what we stand for. And even though we do have a dark past by killing all those horses, which is just outrageous, but no one really talks about it. We've got to acknowledge it, and that will put us in a better place, because you do not kill these horses, and there's only a handful there now. So we've got to stop it.
And Ian, Mike, the cases I mentioned before as well, interestingly, all of those cases the government stopped, and that's the thing, right? What I'm really not understanding is, why are we not stopping for this particular case, and why is there this hyper focus on the Brumbies? It just beats me. So I really would urge the government and the decision makers to actually consider these other cases where they did stop, where all these points are being raised, with other cases where they actually said, right, okay, we will stop, we will assess the data. I think, I would absolutely urge the government to do that. And I do think, it's amazing that there's 22,000 people signed the petition. And not only that, there's so many other people that are out there doing some doing incredible things, like Ashley Avis, Marianne Nusk, I'll probably say her name wrong, but Marilyn Nusk, there's so many people out there that are doing incredible things who I've chatted with and spoken to on this topic. So amazing that everybody's doing what they're doing, and thank you, Mike, for the amazing coverage that you do. I've seen the incredible stuff you did at the weekend with the rallies. So thank you. It really is appreciated.
Yeah, I think everybody's got their heart in the right place. Sometimes we just need to be more collective instead of being like the French resistance, wanting to claim the glory. There is no glory. The only thing is stop the killing. That's all. Stop it. And then we move on. Thank you so much for your time, Sue. Really appreciate it. We're going to play your new song now here on the Country Telegraph.
Thank you.
Are you asking the right questions? Have you heard the whole story? Have you looked beyond the surface? What have you yet to see? Have you seen the new findings? Have the new numbers changed what you believed? Is there more beneath the silence than the answers you had received? Are you asking the right questions? Can you see the new evidence? Have you paused to question Shouldn't certainty be a must? Are you asking the right questions? Is the disparity in the counts enough to call a stop? Before there's no turning back, before more life is taken. Do you know why these valleys became our home? Have you watched us drink from the mountain streams? Have you seen the paths our mothers taught us? Have you asked what we gave back to these mountains? Have you considered every alternative? Do you think protection and compassion can walk this mountain path together before the wind carries only our silence? Before our ghosts walk these mountain trails? Could you lead us to a better way, where every question is answered with honesty and transparency, where every option has been explored before the wind carries only our silence? Before it is too late, could you lead us to a better way? Lead us to a better way. Lead us to a better way.
Just brilliant, and I blame Susan Armstrong entirely, although Coles here on the Gold Coast has said thank you because the numbers have risen for boxes of tissues. Good on you, Sue. You'll be getting a check from them, I'm sure, from everybody, all the supermarkets in Australia, and chemists too, by the way. Brilliant song, and just brilliant stuff. And it's just magnificent. Okay, some of the news that's making news, because we are running so late, so I apologise to our next guest who's just hanging in there, and a very important conversation too with somebody from the US, a New Zealander now living in the US, almost as interesting as a New Zealander coaching the English cricket side. And another one, Stephen Fleming, he's now the new coach. They want to steal Mike Hussey from Australia to also help the Poms beat Australia and the New Zealanders. They didn't do it last time. Isn't that fantastic? The man who was the face of the US's COVID response, and in fact, globally, is potentially facing up to a year in jail after he was accused of contempt. Anthony Fauci served under both Presidents Donald Trump and Joe Biden, refused to answer questions not once, not twice, but 111 times at a tense congressional hearing last month. A weather expert claims a monster gathering in the Pacific could become the most extreme climate event humanity has faced in centuries. I won't do that. But I do see the alarmism growing, the nose of the scientists getting longer, and the politicians going, good, we can now control even more, because we didn't enjoy the COVID experience. Lock them all up. That's right, lock them all up. And then give them a heap of money, and they will destroy the economy and the country. They were tipped, speaking of government, in Australia, the Australian government was tipped to make housing more affordable But the government's negative gearing and CGT changes have done anything but, according to one expert. For example, rentals are going up. The expensive houses that they were buying, these people with some cash handy, are now not going to buy those expensive houses. They're going to buy the cheaper ones. Oops, that didn't work, did it? And more importantly, in sport, AFL football, North Melbourne 15-10-100 defeated the Western Bulldogs, defeated them last night 11-11-77. The game of the year is on Sunday night, by the way. It's St Kilda v Carlton. Starts at 7:30 on a Sunday. Didn't know there's a public holiday. Anyway, 7:30 on a Sunday, it kicks off. Carlton v St Kilda. And I'm expecting St Kilda to win this one, by the way, because we are probably the greatest football side ever, and never to have won, except one grand final. Terrible. Next up, we'll talk all things horses and the environment, a new book and stuff like that, here on the Country Telegraph.
A sunny day for most of the Sunshine State. Just a few isolated showers along the coast north of Mackay. A chilly morning in the south, then a mild to warm and sunny day. Brisbane, 24 degrees and sunny. For New South Wales, plenty of morning frost and fog, particularly on and west of the ranges, then a dry and partly cloudy day almost statewide. Sydney, 18 degrees the top and sunny conditions. Canberra, a frosty start with -5 degrees on the forecast there, and then a mostly sunny top of 16. In Victoria, a few showers sweep across the south during the early morning, and then cloud and showers persist mainly about the ranges in northwesterly flow during the day. Melbourne will see a partly cloudy day with a top of 16, with early morning showers possible. Dry for most of Tasmania with showers just along the west coast and ranges. High cloud thickening later in the day. Hobart, a top of 15 degrees and cloudy. As we head west to South Australia, the weather starts to get more interesting. Northerly winds increasing with showers and patchy rain extending from the west during the day. A possible storm or two along the far west coast as well. Generally dry conditions across eastern districts. Adelaide, a sunny start and then showers arriving in the evening, a mild top of 19 degrees. In Western Australia, we'll see patchy light rain for parts of the Gascoyne and interior districts. And then looking further south, showers coming in from the west across much of the southwest land division during the day. Winds increasing as this cold front approaches. It reaches the southwest coast in the late evening and brings a risk of thunderstorms along the coast as well as a large swell. Perth, a top of 19 degrees with showers and the slight risk of a storm along the coast in Perth as well. Sunny across the top end with just a few fog patches in the morning. Some areas of smoke haze again with plenty of fires in the landscape up north. For Darwin, a sunny top of 32 degrees.
And welcome back to the Country Telegraph, soon to be the Pulse, and more programming. We'll have an app. You'll be able to watch us on TV, all sorts of stuff. And it's so easy to do. Not. Anyway, by the way, somebody said how I'm aging. This morning I started off at 134 and moved up to 192. And dead right, I'm now 462 years old. That's how I feel. Maybe my next guest can help me with that too. Mud bath, maybe pop down to New Zealand for a bit of a holiday, vacation, watch the cricket, something like that. Don't like rugby at all. But it's a great sport for those that do like it. Our week's poll this week, by the way, on the Country Telegraph is, do you believe government and environmental organisations provide accurate information about feral animals? Just use the QR code on our screen to vote. Each vote is secure and anonymous and verified by 2FA, two-factor authentication. You'll have a week to vote before the result is broadcast on the Country Telegraph, soon to be the Pulse, after 8 a.m. next Monday. The link will also be published on our Facebook page this morning. Share the link and the love and ask your family and friends to participate. Make your opinion count. This is the Country Telegraph.
How should we meet the challenge of managing wild horse populations? Hello, I'm Wayne Linklater, and Professor of Environmental Studies and author of the new book, Wild Horses of the Last Land. Learning about ourselves and nature from the Kaimanawa wild horses. Frankly, how we currently manage populations of wild horses is counterproductive. But it doesn't have to be that way. If we would lean more heavily, more fully into what we know about the ecology and behaviour of wild horses, we could design a scheme for managing their populations that is more effective, efficient, and yes, humane. I would argue more ethical. If you want to know more, see the last section of my new book titled Conservation. I'll see you on the other side.
Professor Wayne Linklater began his career as a freshwater ecologist before turning to wildlife biology, a path that's taken him across Africa, Australasia, North America and Southeast Asia. Over 30 years he has studied creatures as varied as, now get this right, I'll get this wrong I'm sure, caddisflies, voles, rhinoceroses and elephants, as well as wild horses, experiences that has shaped both his science and his writing. Formerly Associate Professor of Conservation Science and Director of the Centre for Biodiversity and Restoration Ecology at the Te Haranga Waka Victoria University of Wellington. He is now a Professor of Environmental Studies at California State University in Sacramento and is a Research Associate in the Centre for African Conservation Ecology at Nelson Mandela University, South Africa. His work blends scientific rigour with a concern for biodiversity, drawing connections between animal ecology and behaviour, human values and conservation decisions. He writes and speaks on wildlife management, conservation and politics, environmental psychology, philosophy and ethics, and on the deeper questions of how humans might reimagine and live with biodiversity. Through his writing, Professor Linklater continues to shape conversations in conservation, connecting science with lived experience, and inviting diverse and compelling perspectives to conservation debates. First of all, Wayne, or Professor Wayne Linklater, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
You're a New Zealander, but you seem a good bloke.
Most New Zealanders are. Have you not discovered that yet, Mike?
No, I just see that you're coaching, that your new mob is still coaching the English in cricket. What the hell?
I couldn't count on an interview with an Australian that wouldn't get a dig in somewhere, eh?
But we're doing the next worst thing. There's two O's going to be Mr. Cricket, Mike Hussey. So anyway, that's dreadful. I mean, we've sold our soul to the Poms. I never thought that would ever happen, but well, you guys started it. We're just following. Terrible, terrible. Hey, what did you learn about yourself and conservation when writing this book?
Well, you know, I went in as a conservation trainee, someone trained in mainstream conservation, and I ended up learning that conservation is a whole lot more complicated than I was trained. But more than that, I learned that conservation isn't just about nature, it's about culture. In fact, conservation is culture. Nature is culture too. And really the great debates in conservation, and especially around horses, are conflicts about how we imagine nature, and the cultural conflicts about our relationship with nature, about what belongs and what doesn't belong, and what we believe is nature.
Yeah, I'm interested because in Australia we have and around the world, you know, they're seeming to want to knock horses on the head, just get rid of them. In Australia, it's, you know, the ISC keeps pushing views from conservationists saying that they're doing this, they're doing that to the environment, they're terrible, get rid of all the horses, get rid of this, get rid of that, and the list just goes on. What we see, besides we don't agree with it, but what we see is the lack of humanity involved. It's and even when they reply or you have a story, you've noticed the story is always about a couple of people with a handmade sign or a couple of do-gooders, and it's like, oh, they're doing their best, but they really are misinformed, and then they cut to the inverted commas scientific approach, and it's purely cold, and it's wrong anyway. But it makes it look like, on one hand, you have the ones that have a good heart, but they're entirely wrong, and then you have science. Science says we have to go and kill all these horses, for example. The humanity bit, it's lacking in these decisions. Besides the data is incorrect anyway, but the humanity bit. How have we got to this point? How have we got to this stage that we discuss the life of a living being as a matter of, so what? Science says it's not welcome here.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it cuts to the fundamentals really of what we're about. Look, you talk about invasive species and the Invasive Species Council. Look, what scientists do when they enter those debates is, in mainstream, is they pretend like their science is not cultural, and they pretend that their science isn't values-based. But long before we get to the point of shooting horses, people have made values-based decisions about what's a legitimate animal in a landscape and what's not. And yet, at the same time, scientists pretend that value judgment never happened. And they pretend to be somewhat objective. But what they don't realize, or they're not trained to cope with, is that all that science that they're relying on and describing for others as a justification for a particular way of thinking was in itself first based on a value judgment, a cultural judgment. But they're unprepared to deal with that cultural judgment or discuss it. And instead, they pretend that they're being objective, rational. In actual truth, nothing that humans do is objective. Objectivity is an interesting heuristic or aspirational term, but it can't possibly be that way. I'd like to see scientists actually engage with this debate, acknowledging their values and the culture that brought them to the point where they are, where they can recommend slaughtering thousands of horses.
Tell me, just from what you've said and what we're seeing, and even though they're turning out highly academic or qualified in academia, in being an ecologist, for example, there's like a doctor. A doctor can be the best doctor and the best surgeon in the world. Unless they know how to treat or communicate with and understand humanity, they're just nothing but a hard drive with legs. They haven't got that feeling for humanity. Is that a failure of the education system? And I'll use this in a very rough terms, but pumping out scientists without a heart.
I think you chose a really good example, right? Medical science. Medicine is a science, but healthcare that uses medical science is a cultural endeavor. We have all sorts of value judgments in healthcare that use medical science, and they change the way, depending on our value judgment, they change the sort of medical science we use and how we use it, right? We may choose not to use some medical science, for example. If I could speak personally about your question, though, and that is to say that in my training as a conservation biologist, I was not trained to deal with this complexity. I was trained to see the world in simple binaries, native, alien, right? those sorts of labels were used as shorthand for ecology. But in truth, ecology is a way lot more complex than that. And so I do think it's a failing of the way we've trained conservationists in the past. We haven't trained them to cope with that cultural diversity and that cultural complexity around these issues. And I do somewhat agree with you that if we were trained to do those sorts of things, we'd engage with these problems in vastly different ways, and in ways that would be more inclusive of a variety of opinions in our communities.
We talk about training people to have more empathy, but really that's just experience, isn't it? I mean, you've Africa, Australasia, North America, Southeast Asia, and not just flying across, waving, having a cocktail at a certain airport or whatever. There's a lot more of your life experience into that. So I suppose one hand, I mean, it's like even like a cricketer. We talked about cricket before. Yeah, you get straight bat, defence and whatever, but unless you have the experience to, when you have a sticky wicket, to go back to the basics and to understand, unless you have that, and that's only through experience. So the scientists themselves haven't got that life experience. Do you think there may be, if that's the case, they haven't got that life experience to really appreciate their education and what they have been taught? Do you think that we can be a little bit preemptive in placing people in particular positions because they have high academia, but they have little life experience?
I probably wouldn't make that generalization, but I think I can speak to what you're talking about. And that is to say that I think scientists' work suffers when they don't have empathy for the animals they study, right? And that's intuitive to me. In our own human-human relationships, we know that is true. And I can tell you, again, going back to personal experience that's described in the book, there were moments in my experience studying wild horses that jarred me into reality. I had moments where I had to do postmortems on horses that were mown down by artillery. I had to recover or find foals that had been shot by hunters. But the event that most jarred me into reality is, I describe at the beginning of my book, which was coming across a foal who was trapped in a subterranean channel and like a crated sow and unable to turn around or get out. And I had a decision to make as to whether I would be, as a scientific researcher, objective and just observe and see what happens to foals as they die on the range, or could I thought, consider that maybe humility and compassion are more important than science and nativeness. And at that point, I decided that actually compassion was more important.
What do you think the invasive species council in this case, what do you think their ultimate goal is? I mean, they've said that they want to get rid of all the horses, which according to Claire Rogerson yesterday, she said most of them are gone anyway. And so they're going to go in, they're saying there are thousands left. There are not thousands left, there's very few. And they're still killing them. And the locals are those that looked after the park until they were booted off because all of a sudden they knew nothing. They've warned about, for example, the horse is a great way of limiting fires, because the undergrowth is getting more and more. It's getting thicker and a great fuel for a fire. What do you see happening to an area like the Kosciuszko National Park when the horses are all gone?
Goodness, that's a complex ecological question, and I wouldn't step into that actually because I don't study that ecosystem. But let's take that conversation into the big picture realm. Australia used to have a lot of big browsing and grazing mammals. And so its vegetation, when it did have those, was vastly different to what it is now. And those big grazing and browsing mammals had enormous impacts on the vegetation. And to the best of our knowledge, those species died out for multiple reasons, probably some climate change, but probably they're also hunted to extinction, right? Now, all over the world, after those big animals were exterminated, because that happened wherever humans went, right? We see an increase in wildfire on the landscape. The fires become bigger and more intensive, and that's because those big animals used to remove herbage, basically, used to remove fuel. So part of the problem we face on our landscapes today is that we have denuded those landscapes of herbivores. There are fewer big herbivores living in places like Australia, New Zealand, the United States, in their wildlands than there used to be. And so you don't need a rocket scientist to know that part of our problem is that we don't have enough animals eating enough plants in our landscapes. To my mind, horses could be a useful surrogate for those big animals in some measure, in some places, at least some of the time. And that's an ecologist speaking, right? I don't care about the terms native or alien or introduced. For me, those things are cultural labels. What I care about is using wildlife to better manage our landscapes. And horses could, I would argue should, because of the cultural relationship we have with them, be a part of that process.
You've described the way New Zealand manages its wild horses. Currently, let me get this right, an exemplar to the world. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, look, in fact, here's one for you. It was actually inspired by a 1993 conference in Australia, where Australians got a whole lot of all the stakeholders involved in wild horse management together, and they came to the conclusion that what needed to happen is that all the stakeholders need to be a part of the negotiation, the debate, the negotiation, and the compromise around what was to happen to wild horses in the Australian landscape, right? New Zealanders at the time were going through the same sort of debate, and were concerned, very concerned, that this debate was spinning out of control. It was getting really nasty, and it was going nowhere. And the Department of Conservation at the time said, okay, let's have a stakeholder working group and see if we can negotiate a compromise. And they did it. And in my book, I critique that compromise, and I see many flaws in it, but nonetheless, it was a working compromise, and it managed to push through the debate and come up with a solution that has endured. And that's the exemplar to the world. And my advice back to Australia is, did you forget about that 1993 conference?
Yeah, this is very interesting. How do we? Because again, it's I'm like a blow-in when it comes to this, because I never knew about it, which the media doesn't talk about it for obvious reasons. How do we fix it? How do we? Because they're saying that the horse, the brumby, destroys the environment. It doesn't. It just doesn't. How do we create an environment where both live in harmony? And by the way, they do live in harmony now, but according to some, they don't, but they do. How do we, one, convince those that say they don't live in harmony, and how do we make a park such as, just use anywhere around the world, how do we make it harmonious that horses can live there and the corroboree frog can live there and whatever? Because at the moment, they're saying that the horse got to go, get rid of every horse possible.
So I want to start by acknowledging that wildlife needs to be managed, right? Horses need to be managed too. The problem with the current approach is that it's a blanket categorization that horses are bad, and they're bad everywhere all the time. And clearly, ecologically speaking, that cannot possibly be true. And it's especially not true because a significant portion of the Australian population value horses in those landscapes. So rather than a believing that a government department believing that they have a right to eradicate. Actually, the right they have is to represent the Australian public and to do the science necessary to inform a compromise, right? Get all those people into a room, have a debate, negotiate a compromise, and it's an acknowledgement of nuance, right? No one's arguing that there should be horses all over the place all the time, everywhere. It's about where, when, and how. And that's the debate that needs to be had. We can achieve compromise. New Zealand demonstrated that we can, a workable compromise. The reason this debate gets so intense and so hot is because the government department is behaving as if eradication is the only solution, but it is not.
Yeah, it's truly, and we have this propensity in the Western countries to kill it. We don't need to kill at the moment, and the data that we have, no one agrees with anybody on the data. So that would mean that the data is questionable at best. I know you've got other commitments, but can you just briefly tell us the difference between how New Zealand have got it right and how Australia need to get it right?
I think that New Zealand had greater success at moving through this debate because there was an acknowledgement that it's better to get all interested parties in a room to work out a solution rather than pursue a solution that supports only one cultural perspective and seek only eradication as a solution. So my advice is that government departments do the work of governance, and governance means including people in the decision-making process.
Your next book, obviously, once you start with a couple, you can't stop. You'll be on your tombstone, author of 432 books. Tell us about obviously you've been thinking about the next book. Where does it take us?
The working title of my next book is Conservation in Society, trying to understand the relationship between conservation, both positive and negative, with the communities that it serves and responds to.
I say with the horses that they've been there 200 years. I think they are part of the environment. Because even look at the history of the planet, it's not very long at all, but in the history of Australia, 200 years is just about all of it. So I think we do need to show a lot more respect for humanity. I don't think we need to kill. I think there are other ways of doing it. Science has progressed well enough that we can manage the numbers. And I think we have to manage the numbers, but at the moment, again, the data seems to be in disagreement with other data. And so we believe we know, and they tell us one thing. I do think it's all about, at the end of the day, money. And that's a great pity, because to have a conversation, you have to be have trust or have believe that the others is doing it from a purpose of good. And if you haven't got that purpose of good, that you're doing it for another reason, another agenda, then I think a discussion becomes fruitless, and that's where we need. Look at COVID. The greatest complaint was that you weren't allowed to talk about it if you're a scientist. So a pretty simple thing, talk about it, because science is always evolving. And if you talk about something, great minds will always come to a better decision, which will also become a better decision later on because of that conversation between all parties. I'm sounding like a philosopher. I better stop that. And I'm an Aussie, which is we've got to stop that part too. Look, it's been fantastic chatting to you, Wayne. I would love to have you back on again, because I know you got other time commitments. Would love to have you back on, because I think we need to understand more about what surrounds us, our planet, how we can better serve it. And we are only custodians for a short time. how we can make sure that it's spot on for the next bunch of people that come along. Wayne, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
This is the Country Telegraph. And welcome back to the Country Telegraph. Nice to have your company here. It's 12 minutes away from 9. I like science. I think science is very interesting. I think we need to put humanity in with science, with, for example, with the ecologists and those saying that the park is never to have a horse again. And I found this clip, and it's very interesting. It's something that probably is very dear to my heart and to many others. This is just an interesting little clip, and I'll see if you agree with it.
A lot of people ask me why I drink so much wine, and it's actually because I have a genetic disorder where my body does not produce its own wine, so I have to take supplements.
Interesting. My body doesn't produce scotch. So maybe if I could afford it, I should drink some because my body doesn't produce scotch. I found this clip yesterday. It's very good. It shows you what Australia should be like. And it's a place called Tarolga. I think in, it's the Tarolga Retirement Village in a town called Jandawai. And the school students there, they got together and put together this song, which I think is superb for a Friday. And I'll play this a lot more because it shows you how we should be getting on with each other in this great country called Australia.
Waltzing Matilda, howling down under, heartbreaking wonder. Song for Australia.
A lyric and shearer, mateship and laughter, the battler, the digger, that's true blue Australia.
This is our home, amongst the gum trees and mulga.
Great southern land, a place like no other.
Divided by the years, united in spirit, the old and the young.
Each generation has built a connection. Now we are one voice, we are Australia.
Let's sing it together. A song for Australia.
How fantastic. Song for Australia. Shows you the old farts and the young kids. As my ears pop. As someone said, I'm aging quickly. Now 572. That's what happens. One guy who's older than me is up next. Sorry. Now, this is just another thing that I found online. Always believe what you find online. Not. Anyway, before we get into Ross Johns, who's on every day, by the way, at the start of our show, we nip one of his videos. Has a lot to say. Many have asked, it's just reading here, what does Ross Johns have for breakfast? Whatever he has, we want. No, he doesn't smoke it. I'm just reading some of the contents here. This is the Country Telegraph.
When women get to a certain age, they start collecting dogs and cats. It's called menopause.
I thought it was funny. And Ross did too, but he's being polite. Ross Johns has built a career in agribusiness finance and brings decades of experience in the Australian agricultural sector. Now, he was born in Warwick-Nabil and used to farm land, his son does now, west of Warwick-Nabil, growing wheat, barley, canola and lentils, along with sheep for wool and meat production. Ross is a past director of ABB Grain and ASX 100 listed company, past deputy chairman of GRDC Grains Research and Development Corporation, past director of Western Water, and he is currently president of the Wimmera Mallee Environmental and Agricultural Protection Association, Inc., which is WMEAP.com. I think, Ross, I should know that I always get your videos. And first of all, and good morning, by the way.
Good morning, Mike.
And it's nice to see you smiling. Sometimes we look at your videos first up and it's froth in the mouth. And you're talking generally about your two favourite subjects, either windmills or government. How good is the government at the moment and don't forget, this is a family show. How good is the government in Victoria at the moment?
Well, I think the Victorian government is just terrible, and IBEC, the Corruption Commission, did a review into circumstances around the Metropolitan Fire Brigade Enterprise Bargaining Agreement and Daniel Andrews, and they found that it wasn't corruption. But boy, oh boy, the description of misuse of information, misuse of money, it almost sounded like corruption to me. But it just wasn't termed corruption by IBEC, which I think is very disappointing. There's possibly more to come, and if we get a fully independent process, we might actually find out just where our missing billions have gone. And I refer back to Jeffrey Watson's senior counsel's report, which described $15 billion has been taken out of Victorian budgets by criminals and the CFMEU. And I think that's just terrible. This is taxpayer money. This is our money. This is communities' money. And we absolutely should do better.
But Ben Carroll is doing the right stuff. I mean, for example, he's made a great foray into the rural community, and he needs the money to cover the postage of those infringement notices he set out. Because, I mean, again, that's the right move is to really upset the rural community, which they don't care about anyway. What's the next move, do you think? Because that's a real slap in the face, and it just shows you that he's as slippery as eel poop. I nearly said something.
Oh, no, it's a real concern. The process of government has been very poorly applied, and I think this is just one more example of poor process of government. Ben Carroll is just looking exactly like Jacinda Allen and Daniel Andrews. It's a really sad set of circumstances when we've got a different turkey at the top, but it's the same group of turkeys running the show. We absolutely need a very, very clean sweep of the corruption and the poor process. We've got to get back to a proper process by government. not a dictatorial, totalitarian approach. This is what you'd expect in China, not what you expect in Victoria or Australia.
That's what I love. Fire in the belly there, Ross. It's fantastic. What did you have for breakfast, by the way?
Well, I actually go down to the coffee shop. I do the video, get up about 7, have a shower, do the video every morning and post it about 7:30. Go down to the coffee shop, talk with a group of gentlemen, which I really absolutely love. Have a cup of coffee. I generally don't have breakfast. I walk down the coffee shop 1.4 k's and back again. That's 2.8 k's, and I enjoy that walk. And by 9 o'clock, I'm ready to do whatever else I need to do for the day, whatever that entails.
Well, by 9 o'clock, you'd be ready for bed, wouldn't you?
No, 9 a.m. No, it's all good. And yesterday I went to the Speed Field Days, and you'll no doubt know where that is, Mike, and had an absolutely wonderful time with some absolutely beautiful country Australians. And the feeling is the same right across rural Australia, that the Australian government, the Victorian government has got poor process, and it was just such a good country feel, and young people are probably more frustrated than people of my age or older. They've paid their tax, but these young people are going to be paying exorbitant taxes. The Emergency Service and Volunteers levy, which this Victorian government's putting in place on young people, is totally unreasonable. It's 420% higher on farmland than it is on metropolitan housing, and that's a really big weight on what is a highly risky business of agriculture and food production in Australia. And I think it's just totally wrong. Got to change, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make that change.
Renewable energy, it seems to be, and by the way, it's a bit like saying pigs can fly, and maybe they can one day, but not in our lifetime. And renewable energy, or the unreliables, as Senator Malcolm Roberts calls them. We have those awful transmission lines, turbines, and all that sort of stuff going up all over the place. The LNP have said they're going to put a pause on it, and I haven't seen whether they said they're going to stop it. I haven't heard a whole lot from One Nation either. Can you just maybe I'm
well, I spoke to some National Party politicians at Speed Field Days yesterday, and they said the pause has now become a stop on the VNI West, which is absolutely great to hear. And I think we're seeing a more steely resolve, bucking the poor process of government, and I absolutely think that the opposition needed to do that. That's wonderful. One Nation, I think, is very much against net zero and wants Australia to be a better place. If we looked recently at the recently announced economic data out of the US, their economy has grown 1.5% in the last quarter, which is astoundingly good. So the US is back on growth terms. In Australia, since Tony Albanese has been Prime Minister, we've had no increase in gross domestic product per capita. This is stagnation in Australia beyond belief. Net zero's got to go. We've got to get back and boost our economy and boost the well-being of the young people. And this has absolutely got to happen, and the sooner it happens, the better.
Yeah, we often hear about the carbon offsets. Now, what's your thoughts on Snowy 2.0 carbon offsets and environment, especially in the Kosciuszko National Park? That's where Snowy 2.0 can do as much damage as it likes. And it can be offset with the killing of brumbies, for example, and other so-called ferals. Now, the federal government, as well as spending billions, if not trillions, on Snowy 2.0, has gifted $100 million so far to the National Parks and Wildlife Service for killing invasive species based on scant population numbers, bad data, no one can agree on the data, and really no hard evidence of damage and no measurable outcomes in terms of biodiversity and conservation. So in other words, it's all this green stuff, as I often hear about. What's your thoughts on that? Because Snowy 2.0, do you think it will ever pay for itself?
Well, that's one question. The economics, I think, is a problem. And Australia's running out of money, and these socialists are running out of other people's money to spend, and they'll certainly come to an end when the Australian economy is on its knees. What we need to do as Australians is we need to halt this absolute wanton loss of money and opportunity. But if we get to the environmental aspects, the destruction of 500-year-old gum trees and the elimination of unique Australian wildlife is absolutely unacceptable in Australia. I'm Bob Brown, and I've got the greatest respect for Bob Brown, who is a really upstanding Greens leader, is totally opposed to this poorly planned fast-track renewable build. The Robbins Island in Tasmania should not happen. I think he has some ethics. The current crop